With Resident Evil 4 Remake all wrapped up as far as the main game is concerned, most fans are now waiting in anticipation for Separate Ways DLC news. And so, with that, I'm going to talk about 5 things that I hope will make an appearance in a Separate Ways DLC. None of these are in any sort of particular order, so we're just going to sort of run through them. But let's go ahead and start with the first one right here. So to get things started, one thing that I would really like to see in a Separate Ways DLC would be to have a few more unique sections that are exclusive to Ada, areas that only she can access, whether it's her using her grapple gun to reach those areas, or if it's just simply areas that Leon never went to. I just want to see a few unique sections for her campaign. Because in the original Separate Ways, we never really got much of that. There were a few examples, such as during the island segment, where she enters a room that has a giant ship in it, and then she later destroys that ship. That's really the one major example of that, where Ada gets a unique section in her campaign, where the rest of her campaign is pretty much the same map areas that Leon explored in the main game. So with this version of Separate Ways, I really hope that they give her some unique areas to explore to keep things feeling fresh. And it doesn't have to be anything major, just a few areas here and there. The castle would be a perfect opportunity to implement it because that was a massive castle, and I highly doubt that they had Leon go in every single room of that castle. So they could give Ada a few unique areas to explore within the castle, and I'm really hoping that's something they'll do. Just give us a few places here and there that we have not seen yet for Ada. Something else that I'm really hoping we will see is for the campaign mode to actually be expanded on. I would love for it to be a little bit longer and more fluid than it was in the original. And what I mean by fluid is that I just want things to be more connected. Because in the original, what would happen is you would have one chapter in, and then the next chapter you could be in a whole nother section, and you really didn't even know how you got there. For example, at the end of, I think it's chapter 2, you talk to Luis outside the barn in the village area, and then at chapter 3, we're in the castle at the moment when Leon and Ada first meet, and there's really no sign as to how she even got there. We're just there. And I would really like to learn how she gets to the castle and little things like that. And so having it be expanded so that we can see all of that, I think would be cool. Basically make it more like a full-on campaign mode rather than just a quick summary of what Ada was doing. Obviously it wouldn't be anywhere near as long as the main game with Leon, but I would still like it to be fleshed out more so than what it was in the original Separate Ways. Maybe do something like her Resident Evil 6 campaign, where it wasn't as long as the main campaigns, but it was still a decent size, and we got to see a lot more of what Ada was doing. So that's something I'm really hoping for, is to just have a bit longer of a campaign mode, especially considering that we're going to more than likely be paying for this version. I would definitely love for it to have a little more extra content in there, whether it's puzzles or extra bosses or whatever it may be. I'm just hoping they expand on it in some sort of way. I would also really like to see a chapter that involves Luis, because in the main game, he was fleshed out a whole lot more, where we got to see him help out Leon a lot more than what he did in the original, especially during the castle portion of the game. So it'd be really cool if he did the same with Ada. Maybe in the village portion, we get to see him even more there, helping out Ada. I just think that'd be really cool. We get to see how those two interact with each other, hear their dialogue and stuff like that, and we just get a little more Luis. I think that'd be a really cool thing to see. So I'm hoping that with a Separate Ways DLC, they will actually give us that, and we will get to see the engagement between these two characters, as it was Ada who was working with Luis to try and get the sample. It would be cool to see them actually work with each other in the game. Because in the original, we never really get to see them interact with each other that much, except for the one scene in Separate Ways where Luis goes outside of the barn and they communicate for a little while, and that's pretty much all we got. And we got that same scene in the remake, so I'm hoping for a chapter that involves Luis. I'm also really hoping that we will get to see more bosses in this Separate Ways. In the original Separate Ways, Ada didn't really get any boss fights outside of Krauser and Sadler, and only Sadler's was really unique to her because it was him in his humanoid form, whereas Krauser was basically just a recycled version of what Leon had done in the main game, only this time we're on the rooftops. So I'm really hoping that Ada will get more boss fights, some unique boss fights, and it really does seem like that's what it's going to be pointing towards because, as we all know, in the main game, one of Salazar's vertigo just goes missing. Like, there's no explanation as to what happened to it or anything like that. And so many people are speculating that that vertigo will be a boss in Separate Ways, which would be really cool. And other people are saying that it will mutate into the U3 from the original game, and so that would also be really cool. However, I wouldn't mind it if the vertigo just remained a vertigo and we fought it in the castle, and then come the island, we get to fight the U3 as Ada. I think either one of those options works perfectly fine for me, but if the vertigo stays the vertigo, then that's just more bosses for us in Separate Ways. I would also love a chance at fighting Chief Mendez in his humanoid form. I think something like that would be really cool. Because like in the original, Chief Mendez has one of his guys shoot Ada with a tranquilizer, and then she falls asleep, and then they have her on that sacrificial stone, and then she wakes up just in time. You could have something like that, but instead of the tranquilizer, have it where there's like a little boss fight against Chief Mendez, and then he ends up knocking Ada out, and then that's when the whole sacrificial scene happens instead. So I think that would be really cool if they wanted to do something like that, and it would give us a shot at taking on Chief Mendez while he's still in his more humanoid form. So lots of cool little potential boss fights that they could throw in there. So I'm hoping that they do add more of those in this version of Separate Ways. So the final thing that I hope we get to see is what it is Ada plans to do with the Amber now that she has it. As I've already stated, her betrayal towards Wesker seemed to be a sudden one rather than a planned one like in the original, and that leads me to believe there is no organization involved. And if that's the case, I'm really interested to know exactly what it is Ada plans to do with the Amber now that she has it and now that she has betrayed Wesker. I'm hoping that we get like an extended ending where maybe Ada contacts an organization and tells them that she has something they may be interested in, and then it kind of ends there. That way we know, okay, there is another organization involved and that's who she's going to send it to. Or maybe an organization contacts her because they somehow knew that she was on that mission for Wesker, and now they're trying to see if she got it and if they could sway her their way instead of Wesker's way, to which she ends up striking a deal with them since she left Wesker, and that's what ends up happening. Or maybe she destroys it or keeps it herself, whatever it may be. I just hope we get some sort of closure with the Amber and it doesn't just disappear and we never mention it again. I don't want that to happen. I want to know what happens to the Amber, and hopefully Separate Ways DLC will explain exactly what happens with it. But that's pretty much everything that I'm hoping we will see. Again, none of these were in any sort of particular order or anything like that. It was just sort of 5 things that I would like to see in a Separate Ways DLC. And with that, what are things that you would like to see for a Separate Ways DLC? Is it any of these? Is it something different? Let me know in the comments. And for now, we're just going to have to wait and see when Capcom decides to finally reveal it. I'm hoping September, Tokyo Game Show, that is when they will reveal it and we will finally get to see it. But until then, I'm just going to have to sit here and wait just like every other fan in anticipation and hope that it's coming out sooner than later, along with Ada and Wesker for Mercenaries mode, because that's another thing that we're still waiting for to happen. But with that, I will go ahead and wrap up this video here, and I shall see you all on the next one. See you then.